Well, I think it is safe to say that we are in the world of AI right now. AI is everywhere. It's in every application going out there, isn't it? Right. Okay. So I have some apps. We're going to be talking about my document storage app that's used mainly here locally, and so there are some other people that use it and stuff like that. It allows me to store documents and stuff and categorize them by user and stuff like that. It's not public, but we're going to be adding some AI to it. Well, I've added it, but I'm going to explain to you how I've done it. It might help you in your quest to enable AI in your random side project. Let's jump over to the computer where I'm going to explain it to you in Excalidraw what we're going to do. Okay, so first off, we've got the device. So this is the phone. We have the phone, and then we have the server, and then we've got the AI, which in this case will be Gemini. So let me explain to you what's going to happen. On the user's device, they're going to take a photo. Let's indicate this by a blue photo square. That photo has then got to go from there to the server. It's going to be uploaded to the server. And then from the server, we're going to send that to Gemini. And then hopefully Gemini is going to send back implementation about the photo. Tell us some information and whatever. And then using that information on the server, we're going to do some compute and store it in the right location in the storage system and file that photo away and reference it in my application. Now let me explain that in a bit more of a physical sense and I'll show you what we're actually doing. So this is my application. This is my document storage application. As you can see here, you've got documents, recent expenses. I'm not going to click on any of them pages. I don't want to reveal data you shouldn't see. But if we come down here to the test object, you can see here we then have these like document informations. They can have a little icon, stuff like that. If I click on new test, you can see here I've put a location in and then it's got some information. It's got a package.json, it's got a dashboard to zip file, etc. It's got an image of some shoes. You can see all of that. And well, these are files we've uploaded. But what I want to be able to do is generate the name automatically. Okay, so now I'm going to demonstrate it for you so you can have an example of what it does and then we'll look at the code implementation, all that sort of stuff. So in the application, which is like this, you click the plus and then click the add file button. You then pick the file from wherever the file is located. So for instance, I'm going to go with this file, which is a parking ticket photo of Leicester City Council. I think that's simple, public information, all that sort of stuff. Press open, you then get this nice pop-up that says AI is thinking. I might not animate that, I might just have it appear. Once it's had a bit of a think, it then comes back and tells you that the file was successfully uploaded and it's added to Leicester City Council parking tickets 2025 0627, and I think that's superb, perfecto. We could have a look at the actual API request that happened to understand that a bit better. So I've isolated the API request here. Well, first off, let's look at the URL. So the URL is api.net apps, docs app, version 2 file, and then we're using this ID. So normally when you're uploading it to the docs app location, I'm setting an ID here. So this is the ID of the section you want to upload. But I'm using TDS file auto detect section and category as the ID, so I know that on the server I can do something different with this. Okay, yes, I could have done a different endpoint. Yes, I could have done a different this, and I could have done a different that. I just thought this was easier. It means that all the file upload stuff is handled here. We just have to run some code beforehand to just tell it where to add it. Upload, and then the type. So the type in this case is image. Most of the time it will be for this endpoint with the auto detection. Then we upload the file. There you go. There's the image. I'm sure that's really interesting to you guys. And then coming back, we just had successful file uploaded to, and where it was uploaded to, and the file ID. We can then use this to find the file in the system if we wanted to. So maybe we could go to file or something like that, if that makes sense. So now let's look at the coding implementation, as I think that's way more interesting. You want to know how it's written. So we know we went to files, upload image. So if I come down here to index, we can find that. So file, string, upload string. That's the file upload endpoint. So if I just search for that, that's this one. So this is the file upload endpoint. I'm not going to explain all of this. This just handles general file uploading. We're only going to focus on the specific AI component of this code. So start the function. We'll check if there's a file. If the file ID is just file, we're uploading a file as part of a different system. So we can call this endpoint from different applications. So the reporting application stores photos. They call this endpoint with the word file and it returns back the ID so that they can reference the photo in the database. That's completely unrelated. But then the next check we're going to do is if the ID is TDS, file, auto detect, section and category. And if it is, we're going to look at adding the category ID information that we need. We need to know document information and document ID. So we need to know the document ID where we're going to save it. So this is essentially what it's getting saved into. This might be something we're going to generate new, or this might be something that already exists. So I have this AI calculate document. It takes in the user that made the request and the file they uploaded, or files, if they uploaded more than one, but in this case it's just one. So AI calculate document, this takes in the user and the file, as I said. We then make some API key requests to get the API key for Gemini. So we're using Gemini's model and we need to have the API key for that. And then we get the file URL of the temp file that you uploaded. So you uploaded the temp file to the system, it was stored in a temporary directory, and we get in that URL so we can reference the file. Then what we do, I missed this bit, but then what we do is we usually get all the documents the user can access. So this is all the documents that already exist in the system that maybe we might want to add the user to. We might want to add this to that file, to that user. None of that made any sense, did it? We might want to add this document to an existing document in the system. That's what I meant. But most of the time, they don't exist, so we're going to create a new one. Documents, we loop through all the documents, we remove stuff to not send to the AI. That's not important. We hash it down a bit, and then we compact it even more. Compact it by a new line, just to make it as small as possible, but send as much data as possible. Because, of course, that's where the money comes from. Then I have the prompt. So it says that you are an expert at looking at images and working in images. Mainly these are going to be documents, blah, blah, blah. You can read the rest of that. Basically, that explains to it what it's got to do and how it's going to look at and analyze the photos. And then we pass in the documents. And then with Google Gemini, you can provide a prompt response. So this is what you're expecting back as a string. And I think this is ideal. So you can see here that we've got the ID. This is the ID of the best matching document, if this one exists. If not, we're going to say we're going to create a new one. So we're expecting a new item name. We're expecting a name for the new document. The service ID is the group, the hierarchical group that it should sit within. It has to sit within a hierarchical group, so it's basically that. Which is called service ID. File description. This is the description of the file. We don't actually store this yet, but in the future, I want to be able to store the file description so that we can search quicker for it. And the date, if there is a date object. This is so that we can reference the date and put it on the calendar, automatically say something in the future. These are the required fields. The date is optional, so is the file description. We're just getting this back from Gemini. Response. So we then send this to a function called query Gemini Flash. We're using the Gemini Flash 2.0 model. We're going to use the light model. It's a bit too light. We're taking the API key, the prompt, the file URL, and the config. Let's jump to that. So this is how we're actually talking to the Gemini API model. Just the URL here, adding the API key at the end. So we're going to get the file. This loads the file from the URL into the memory system. That's what I meant. And if it's false, we're going to return back an error. And we're going to throw an error here. Determine the MIM type. So basically, whether it's PNG, JPEG, GIF, WebP, etc. That sort of stuff. We're only handling really these cases. Of course, it could be something else. So we handle those. But most of the time, we're going to prefer it to be one of them. Basic 64 encode the contents. Then send it back to Gemini. So send the part as the prompt. And inline data, MIM type data, and the data. Sorted, it knows that, and then you can see that in the endpoint. Gemini config, send the config, send post request, blah, blah, blah. You get the idea. Make a stream connection to the server. Get back the result. If the result is false, throw an error. That's the sort of standard stuff. And JSON will decode the error. And we send that back to the system back at the top here. We are now back at the top here. And then we check if the ID is empty and the response name and service ID are not empty, e.g. we're making a new document. And if we're making a new document, we create a new section document, blah, blah, blah. Create a new one, set the name, all that sort of stuff, then return the ID. I could return here, but what I'm doing next is we're going to be looking at the date object. So now if there is a date set, that we add that date to the existing section, whether it be new or old, doesn't really matter. And then we just return a standard format of ID, new item, name, service, file description, and text. We already use the ID in the next section, which is back on the file upload, which, as you can see here, extracts the document ID, and the rest of it is code just to add it to the document, which we're not going to go into because that's your own custom implementation. Realistically, this is my own custom implementation, but I just want to show you how to add AI, and it's pretty simple. I upload that photo, I do that. Should we have a look at the iOS code? That might be what you're interested in as well. In iOS, it's pretty simple. So my application is written in a combination of SwiftUI and UIKit. So actually, the add button is in UIKit. Where is it? It's up here. So this is the add button. It's add tapped. So if we come down here, you first saw a notification whether you want to add a file or add a category. Adding a category is just adding a new one of those data objects in the system. But we added a file. So we present add file flow, which calls 2DS docs add API function with present AI image import. So this is a static function that actually, I have just declared it a static. It probably doesn't need to be static. But in the import, we're actually calling another function, which is upload file, which is up here. This essentially checks which type of file you'd like to upload, like camera, photo, or file. And we just get that respective image or file. It's always going to be an image in this case. And then we return that. So that allows us to have that picker option to pick which one you want to implement from. So that does that, and then that returns back an image. If the image is empty, then we just return. You've not uploaded the file, you've cancelled out of the process, that's fine. Then we show the AI thinking view. So this is now animated as false. This is just this view. If this renders, it just shows this little spinny thingy. This is just to indicate to the user that there is some user interaction happening. We then compress the photo a bit, compress it to 0.6. This is just smaller for the AI model and smaller for when we're saving it. We don't need it in full res. We don't need it in full res to be uploaded, so we just compress it. Most of the time, it's going to be putting it as a JPEG because we convert it to JPEG, and then we track the progress. Here we start a progress tracking system, and then we upload the file. And as you can see here, we're creating a URL dynamically using the file ID and the type as image. Those were the two parameters that we saw earlier on in the upload image. We get back the file data here, and then we just show the response to the user, whether it be error or completion handler. And we make sure to dismiss the loading view. We do that here, or we do it here if there is failure to compress the image. We don't handle that. Maybe we should handle that. That's probably an implementation I should add. But I think that's about it. That shows you all of the code implementations of my random AI adding project. I don't know if there's anybody still watching. If you are, I hope you've enjoyed. This is me waffling about AI. But anyway, I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.